Hello and welcome. My name is Brett Baker, and on behalf of Denis Wick Products, it gives me great pleasure to talk today to Christopher Houlding, who's all the way over in Germany. So it's great to see you, Chris.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to talking about brass things with an old friend and colleague.
Absolutely, no, it's wonderful to catch up and ask you a couple of questions, and certainly for our American audience, if I put it that way, it'll be good to sort of talk a little bit about the fact that you're from the UK, but you actually live in Germany at the moment. So, can you tell us a little bit about how that all came about?
Yes, well, I suppose from the American point of view, Germany is not all that far from the UK, so I didn't have to travel very far. But it is, of course, culturally totally different. One of the things I think we're all familiar with the constraints on the arts business over the years, Corona notwithstanding. And one of the great things about Germany is that it still supports a largely government-supported arts system. And certainly for classical music, I mean, we still have over 120 full-time professional orchestras in Germany, which I think is quite amazing, which means where I'm based in northwest Germany, what they call the Ruhrgebiet, the old Ruhr region where the River Ruhr runs through, the very industrialized region, we've got a lot of larger cities close together. So where my university is situated, and for my students, we have potentially 10 professional orchestras within 50 miles of the Hochschule. So for the prospects of extra work and opportunities, stage music for opera and stuff like that, couldn't be any better. So I'd always toured Germany and been aware of Germany when I was a professional musician back in the UK. And back in 2006, I was principal trombone of Opera North in Leeds. I was a senior tutor at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester. And during the years doing those two jobs, I made it a point to try and get out, do some masterclasses, some workshops. And as you know, I've also been involved on the board of ITA for many years. So I'd got a track record of doing international teaching and the things that are required to become a professor. I mean, these are the sort of things. I mean, this is another big difference, that really in the UK, there are very few full-time posts in conservatoires. Is basically the head of the department, and the rest, as you know, is hourly paid. In Germany, the professors of each instrument are full-time civil servants to the German government. So it's a totally different system. So I was kind of, after playing 27 years as principal trombone of a professional symphony orchestra, I was kind of thinking, I don't want to get to the point where I stop enjoying this. It was a great job and artistically great, but after a while, there is a lot of repeat stuff. And if you're not careful, and I think we've all seen it with colleagues, you put your head down and you just play the notes. And that's not how I wanted to finish my career. So I was looking around and I became aware of this position in Essen, which is a large industrial city in northwest Germany. So I just went for it, just thinking, well, let's have a go. And when I was offered the job, I actually went to two or three people for some advice and say, look, I've just been offered a professorship in Germany. And they said, take it. And I haven't regretted it for a moment, because basically it's like having a proper salary, but you're very much left to your own devices. It's what you make of it. You can, if you want, not do very much at all. There are professors that don't particularly push it. But of course, that's not in my psyche. And I came to a school that had got loads of potential, but was not really doing anything specific for the training of particularly ensemble musicians. So one of my briefs when I got the job was said, look, can you build a department? So we don't have a head of department. The four professors of each of the instruments, we just do it between us. That's part of the job. And so it's very nice to have colleagues that you can get on with and delegate the various tasks. So yeah, incidentally, one of the people that I actually spoke to and said, Denis, I've been offered a professorship in Germany, and he said, take it. And
Brilliant.
he was one, Denis Wick was one of the people that I just ran it past, and he said 100% do not miss this opportunity. You will not regret it. So I always thank Denis for that. He's always been a great mentor over the years, right from the beginning at the Guildhall School when I was taught by Denis. And I mean, anybody who knows Denis or has read the book constantly has little quotes popping up, and that's how it is. So that's basically why I'm here, and artistically, and of course, at the moment, Germany is still pretty holding its own in sort of quality of life terms. I think we're all familiar with some of the problems the UK is having at the moment. So sorry, but I don't regret being in Germany for a moment at the moment. But
and how is your German? Were you sort of quite fluent at German before you went, or have you had to pick it up as you go along?
I had schoolboy German and I had touring German, which you can imagine which was normally alcohol and menu based vocabulary.
And where's the local toilets and things like that?
Yes. Languages, I can't pretend, and anybody listening to this that knows me will know that my German is not great. I can do enough to certainly function, and I've sat on committees over the years. So yes, it's not something that comes easy to me, but I can get by. But to be quite honest, in our part of Germany, English is spoken quite a lot, and we do have a lot of overseas students who come with English as their second language. So actually, it's probably quite beneficial to the university that they've got a native English speaker. I'm often called on to sort of, oh, can you speak to this person? Can you find out what this person really wants, or something like
yes,
that?
you can broker by the sounds of it in that case.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to be honest, many of my students over the years have said, "Oh, it was great having trombone lessons with you, but our English improved so much." So yeah, I mean, I can speak German. Don't ask me to do it here.
No, that's fine. You mentioned the ITA, the International Trombone Association, and have been involved with that a long time, and people will certainly be aware of your time at Opera North and then at the Royal Northern. But I wonder if I can ask you, were you always a trombone player? Did you start on trombone, or did you were a bagpipe player before taking up the trombone? I just wondered how that all came about and whether it was by luck or by judgment, really.
Well, sadly, no very entertaining story. It was very, very, very normal, really. I mean, the only instrument that I did play before was the piano, and my parents thought that I'd got some kind of musical promise, and they bought a piano from an old lady up the road for £10 or something way back. And as it happened, we lived next to a piano teacher. So I got going on the piano when I was about 7. And then I was lucky enough to go to a very go-ahead junior school in Loughborough in Leicestershire. And the Parents Association bought 4 brass instruments for the students. And of course, the music master knew that I was already playing piano, and so he selected 4 students to play. They bought 2 trumpets, a French horn, and a trombone. And so we lined up, and he was scratching his chin, and he looked at me and said, "You're going to be the trombone player because you're fat."
No.
So that was it. And I took the trombone home, and it was kind of, I mean, life changed at that point, because it just gave my whole life a focus. And I don't ever remember not thinking that I was going to have a career as a trombone player right from the beginning. So questions that I think, you know, many parents will have had with quite talented offspring of, well, what are you going to do with your life? It was never an issue. Yes, I was lucky enough to have lessons with John Iveson as a 16, 17-year-old. John Iveson, who we all know as a fantastic trombonist and a musician, Philip Jones Brass Ensemble, BBC Symphony, Royal Philharmonic, you name it, Royal College of Music. And he sort of said to me, I remember actually, and we laugh about this now because I'm still in contact with John. I played my party piece as what I thought was a talented brass bander in Leicestershire, playing with bands around Leicester. And so I can't remember what it was. I played it, and he just looked at me and he went, and proceeded to play some little extracts from it. And I went, oh. So just to hear and see how John made his wonderful old Con 8H speak, that was a revolutionary moment for me. And I was pretty fixed on going into the military. I'd looked at the RAF particularly, and that's what I thought I was going to do. And he said, you know, there are conservatories. And I went, what do you mean? Like music colleges, professional orchestra, you know, like, oh. And so I kind of auditioned, and I got a place at the Guildhall, and everybody said, yeah, Guildhall, that's the place to go at the time. And that's where I went. That's where I came into contact with Denis Wick, obviously, and Eric Kries and Peter Gain. And those were the sort of 3 trombonists that formed me. I mean, in those days, when I say in those days, I mean, it's quite a long time ago now, but the late 70s, we didn't really have many visiting stars. You know, there wasn't really the market for that. Occasionally, an American orchestra would come through, and you might sort of get to meet, you know, somebody like Ralph Sauer or something like that. But no, I feel I was pretty homegrown. And so my influences are basically those 3 gentlemen, which, of course, still remain great friends and mentors.
And certainly not a bad bunch to rub shoulders with. So there's not going to be any complaints there.
No.
Excellent. Was there a moment where you feel that you made a transition, as it were, from thinking like a student to then thinking like a professional? Or were you always thinking like a professional?
No, very much a student. And I remember the sort of advice that we'd get from all 3 of those gentlemen. But in different, I mean, Peter Gain's advice was extremely good on the technical side, sound, articulation, things like that. You have to do these things to be fundamentally strong. As far as taste and musicality, Eric Kries is the best. And I can remember when I was in my 3rd year, which in those days was the final year of the graduate course, going to Eric, and he would I would start playing, and he would, no, you know, and he would show me a different way. So I do feel extremely grateful for Eric's musical input. And I think Denis, the thing with Denis was his advice was practical. He was there, he was principal trombone of the London Symphony Orchestra. He was out there doing it, films, sessions, the works, and he would tell you how it is. And I always remember him saying to a horn player when we were doing a brass repertory, who decided to argue the point with Denis, and he just looked at him and he said, remind me never to book you. Which we all went,
yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Talking about Denis and the huge array of Denis Wick products that we have, you've been a long time player of the Denis Wick products in terms of mouthpieces and the mutes. So would you say that those products have helped you in terms of your progression as a player? Have you experimented with different types of mutes? Have you tried different mouthpieces, or are you somebody that played a certain mouthpiece and you've stuck with that for infinity?
Well, I was lucky because when I was kind of an impressionable youngster, the Denis Wick products were just becoming available. We were in the sort of early 70s, and I had a school trombone with a Rudy Muck mouthpiece, a Ruddy Muck mouthpiece. I don't know if you remember
Yes,
those, and it was
I
kind
do.
of very small in every sort of way. And I remember my trombone teacher saying, "Oh, we really ought to get you a better mouthpiece." And I went to the local music shop. And they said, "Oh, we've just got this, a new range. Denis Wick is the principal trombone of the London Symphony Orchestra. She's making mouthpieces. You should try one." And I said, "Oh, yeah, 6BS. I'll try this." And so I was on the 6BS for quite a long time until I graduated to the large bore instrument. And when I graduated to the large bore instrument, I had to look no further than the Boosey and Hawkes Sovereign, which Denis had also developed. So into my brand new Boosey and Hawkes Sovereign trombone, I just moved up a size and went to a 5AL. And basically, I've stuck with that sort of setup for years. During my professional career, I've looked at one or two. I played on a Bach mouthpiece for a little while. I find the Bach mouthpiece, it's amazing. It stood the test of time. It's fabulous. It's kind of the direct opposite to the Wick. And it's extremely comfortable, which I find a problem. I really like the flatter rim because I find it helps me to form an embouchure that can articulate properly. So having played on the classic range of Denis Wick's mouthpieces for many years, when the Heritage came out, this was a revelation. And I remember Denis saying to me, he said, "Now look, don't say what everybody else says. Oh my God, what's that? Have you gone back 100 years? Just try it." And I have to say, I was amazed, because that took my quest for clean articulation into a new realm. It suddenly got clearer and much easier. So I would urge anybody not to dismiss the Heritage range because how it looks like, and perhaps the rather sort of antique view. I think it's a really great mouthpiece, and it totally works for me. So I've been on it now, I don't know how long they've been out. It feels like probably about 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, sounds about right. It's 12 to 15 years, I would say. Yeah,
And I've several students playing on them who have chosen to play on them. So, I've obviously got a few in my cupboard, and when they turn up with a mouthpiece, there's a few that they all know that I go, "My God, you don't want to play on that." I'll give them a Denis Wick Heritage to change, and some of them stick with it. Some of them move on to other things. I'm not. For me, it's absolutely the student's choice. But a lot of them have stayed with it, and I know they're incredibly popular in Germany. Obviously, you would be able to reveal the numbers, but I regularly meet people professional players playing on the heritage mouthpiece, and particularly in the brass bands over here. We've got a sort of a really developing brass band scene in Germany, which is my passion at the moment. And just changing the subject, I'm on the Deutsche Brass Band Association Music Commission, and I mean, they tend to use me as a bit of a sort of a troubleshooter. So I don't have my own band, even though we have 5 or 6 bands in North Rhine-Westphalia, but I'm going around and doing some training and guesting and advising, and it's great fun. I love it. And I'm always seeing, I mean, the tenor horn mouthpiece heritage mouthpiece seems to be very popular, and also the soprano mouthpiece, the soprano cornet. And so yeah, it's interesting times.
Oh, it's a wonderful scene out there, and as you say, it's really growing very, very quickly, and with the excellent venues that you have in Germany, and then this sort of change from, let's say, brass ensemble to brass band. I mean, it's everything's geared up for that to work really well. So I'm sure it's
absolutely. We have a tremendous tradition of brass playing in Germany, as you can imagine, both from things that you see like wind orchestras. We've got, like many European countries, even the sort of beer hall bands, but of course the Posaunenchor, which is like the church bands. Many churches support like a 10 to 15 piece brass ensemble that are playing a variety of music, not just religious music, but all sorts of stuff. And I have to say that some of the things they play are a little unadventurous. When these players hear a British brass band, they go, wow. And so we've got a lot of people that are sort of moving in and out of the Posaunenchor into the brass band as well, and doing both. I mean, you can do both.
Yeah. I know it's very exciting. Who do you think inspired you more, your teachers or your peers as you were growing up as a player?
Well, I think that's pretty 50-50. As I've already said, I was lucky enough to have inspiration and mentoring from the best who I totally trusted. But I'm always saying this to my students, that it's all very well receiving the information in an individual lesson, but the best part is playing with your cohort and watching those things, particularly the older students, watching them actually being sort of enacted. So at the Guildhall, there were 2 or 3 players that I sort of revered, because I was able to sit with them and watch exactly what I'd been told a few moments earlier by Peter Game actually happening. And I was lucky enough, there were a few wonderful players at the Guildhall at the time, senior to me. One in particular that I think we'll probably all remember, sadly she died a few years ago, Eileen Nystad, Norwegian trombone player. She was for many years the principal trombone of the Oslo Philharmonic, I think probably for 35 years or something, did that job. Sadly lost her battle with cancer a few years ago. But she was a tremendous player, and she used to be very critical of me. She, in her sort of stern Norwegian, she said, Christopher, you can't do that. Don't do that. And she would play it, and I'd always be, oh wow. Then she was only a few years senior to me, but I just always remember seeing all those good habits that she'd come to the Guildhall for from the same people, and she was able to, perhaps as a master student, act on it quicker than me, but she was a most influential player. So I would say 50-50.
That's brilliant. Well, Chris, it's been fascinating listening to a bit of your story, only a little bit, and particularly as being one of your students, it's great to sort of see how you developed as a player, because it's not something we've really chatted about either. But thank you very much for your time and for taking part in this interview.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. And I'd just like to finish off by, I mean, Brett, you are particularly unique in this, that you're a player that has developed in all sorts of ways. And this is what I try and get over to all my students. Yes, of course, you're specifically training performers, but quite often people take different pathways into professional music. And I think right from the beginning, you always had a huge kind of panorama of the business. And I think if you look back at your career, I mean, there's nothing that you haven't been able to turn your hand to. And that, to me, that's something that's very typical of trombonists, that we do have the flexibility and the versatility to seem to be able to turn our hands. So I look on all my students, and especially you, Brett, with great proudness that I've at least had an input into another successful career. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's been it's been an amazing journey, and yes, you've very much influenced that journey and how I've gone about things. So no, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett.